Welcome back to the Mental Health Matchmaker podcast. I'm your host, Brooke, and today we are doing something a little different. This is an Ask a Therapist episode, a format where you submit your therapy questions and we bring them directly to a licensed therapist for honest, grounded answers. Instead of our usual deep dive conversations, I'll be asking 3 of your questions, and our guest therapist will walk us through each one. Today, I'm joined by registered therapist Jessica, and we're talking about what self-care actually looks like, what it means if therapy feels hard to access emotionally, and how to work with a harsh inner voice. Let's get into our first question. Okay, Jessica, I have a question for you. When we think of the term self-care, we often think of bubble baths or spa days. But what does it actually look like in everyday life?
So self-care can definitely look like that, and that can be part of it. I think self-care is also the things that we don't typically think about. So like setting boundaries, pushing yourself to do things sometimes even when you don't want to, but you know that your future self will thank you. And that can look different for everybody, and it looks different depending on the day. So for example, if you know that you have a busy day tomorrow and you really don't want to prep your breakfast or your snacks or whatever it is, but you know tomorrow you're going to be starving and you're not going to have time. Like taking that act to really take care of yourself and do it even if you don't want to, you'll be good the next morning and you'll be like, oh, thank God I did this. So just taking the time to really think about not only how you're feeling in the moment, but also what's going to serve you moving forward. And that's where being honest with yourself and really learning how to check in and recognize, what do I need? What do I have the capacity for? What do I not? Is a really big piece of self-care. And we also have to learn how to be flexible with it. So I know right now there's a really big thing around self-care routines. When we throw the word routine in, we think it's something that's rigid and we have to do it consistently. And we do need to do self-care consistently, but how that looks and how we show up for ourselves is different depending on what we're going through and what we're not.
You're sort of pointing out that sometimes self-care for your future self in the current moment might not feel that convenient or great.
Yeah.
But it's about setting up that future version of you if you have the capacity again, which that illustrates again, it's going to look different moment to moment, day to day.
It's really learning how to listen to yourself, and there's so many different ways that you can figure out how to do that, because that alone can be very daunting. That alone can be self-care, learning how to hear what you need and where you're at. And another thing I can add too, and I think we've talked about this, is also self-care can look like those stereotypical things with bubble baths and spa days and, going for a haircut and all that fun stuff. But it can also be like setting boundaries. Like I said, doing the hard things even when you don't want to. And there is kind of a more heavy side to self-care, but it's exactly that, is you do things in the moment that maybe you don't want to, but you'll be so thankful that you did moving forward.
Let's move on to our second question. What if therapy feels like it's not working, not because your therapist is wrong for you, but because you're struggling to access your emotions? Here's what Jessica had to say.
Okay, that's a good one. So one thing that I've been doing with clients and on a personal level with myself in therapy is when we struggle to connect with the emotional side, it's more so let's switch and get in touch with the physical side. Our bodies communicate with us a lot, and we have either learned to not listen because it's not convenient, or sometimes we don't have the space or the capacity, or we just haven't learned how to listen to our bodies, right? But our body will always talk to us. What I'll do in session, if we're struggling with connecting with the emotional side, is what are we feeling physically? So a lot of times, if there's situations in therapy that, we're trying to work through, and it's difficult for us to sit there and remember how we felt in the moment. So sometimes we'll actually paint that picture. Okay, here we are now. We're going through what we went through. Let's close our eyes, get into that headspace. What are we feeling? And it's so interesting how we'll be like, oh, my shoulders are really tense, or my hands started sweating. I'm feeling really nervous. I feel like there's a weight on me. Or the opposite, it could be, I feel really excited, like I'm lighting up as I talk about this. I have a burst of energy, but just being really conscious of what actually is going on, and your body will tell you. And we use that kind of like as a stepping stool or a bridge to get us to get in touch with our emotional side and learn how to put those connections together. This is how I'm feeling physically. This is the emotion that's now coming up with it. I can see that, right? And I can then now process and move forward.
You mentioned physical sensations and like body cues. And for myself, I actually believe that through different influences and environments that I was in, I trained myself to also just override my body's cues. That was another thing for me where I didn't even realize that there were habits formed.
Yes.
And that maybe there were times my body was communicating to me, but I got so good at overlooking those things too. So also like relearning. We might have to start at the beginning.
Yep, 100%. And I see this a lot actually with clients that come in that are struggling with burnout, because I always will say our body, it will always talk, right? Whether we choose to listen is a different thing, but when it wants to be heard, it will be. And it will be at the most inconvenient times too, right? Like we'll notice we're getting sick really often. We don't have the energy to do things. That's when that burnout comes in. I see a lot of people, we have to go on stress leave for work. We kind of have to drop everything. People will go away or like, again, just kind of completely change their lives because they are not physically able to function anymore with what they've been doing. And a lot of times that is because we've learned like I have a busy life or I have things going on or this environment isn't safe for me to learn how to listen to myself. So we ignore it and we ignore it. And the more we ignore it, the stronger that communication becomes eventually with our body. So when we can learn to recognize the smaller signals, that's when change can happen. And it's also really interesting, the more you learn to listen to your body, the more it talks to you. And we'll notice, like even for me now too, right? I will notice right away when my shoulders are tense. Sometimes, and that was just every day. I work at a desk, I'm on autopilot all the time. So that was a normal thing for me. But now I notice that in moments of stress. And sometimes now I'll notice my physical signs before I'll notice the emotional. And that's my cue to take a step back and be like, okay, what's going on?
Yes.
But yeah.
That actually resonates with me as well. I feel like I'm really good at identifying the emotions through the words and just like having so many of these types of conversations. But often when it comes to identifying within myself, it does actually start with noticing the physical cues. And I love that you said it's almost like you're nurturing that relationship with yourself. So then the communication back and forth is easier. Like it would be if you were nurturing any relationship. We're like, we're just open with our communication.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it honestly feels really weird in the beginning to have to really consciously be like, okay, how am I feeling? How am I feeling? Then to not have to ask yourself that question and then notice your body talking to you and actually hearing it. It's honestly really comforting sometimes because it's like, oh, hey, I'm here and this is what it's telling me. Okay, let me do something. Let me take a step back or, and that is really nice when it happens.
Sometimes the hardest voice we deal with is the one inside our own head. If you've ever wondered whether that harsh inner voice is normal, this one's for you. Sometimes I have a really mean inner voice and I'm not sure what to do with it. Is that normal? Also, this is relatable.
Yes, this is absolutely normal. I have a pretty mean inner voice myself. And this is, I would say, probably one of the most common things that, especially for clients that have a constant inner dialogue, for a lot of people that struggle with anxiety, with overthinking, all that fun stuff, it really is that inner dialogue and that nasty inner voice. So one thing that I've been doing that I've been finding is really helpful is it's from narrative therapy and it's called externalizing. So really what that is we're taking that inner voice or inner struggle, whatever it is that's not serving you, pulling that outside of yourself and making it its own thing and its own entity. And for some people, when we do that, it can be a person, it can be an object, anything that resonates. I find person is kind of the most common one. And then we really make this a thing. Like, okay, what does this person sound like? What do they look like? How do we know when they're around? How do we know when they're gone? What are they saying to you? What happens when they start to speak? Really just personifying this voice, making it its own thing that's not part of you can be really powerful. Sometimes just doing that takes the power away from it. For example, I had one client so we did this exercise with her. She struggles a lot with overthinking, anxiety in general. And so we pulled this voice outside of her, really made it a person, worked through it. And towards the end of the session, she kind of had a moment of realization where this person, this thing actually sounds a lot like my dad. That alone, that realization was enough for her to kind of have it not control her the way that it had been. So that's one of the things that I love about doing this exercise is sometimes when we just pull it outside of ourselves and give it a name, that alone shuts it up. And if it doesn't, then there's more that we can do to work through it.
Or before creating that separation, it almost can feel like an inner battle. Like it's you against yourself.
Yeah, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And sometimes the really interesting thing with this is the power that the voice has over you is just the fact that it's just you that hears it. So when we take it outside and we are saying what it says out loud, sometimes even that, it's like, this is silly. Like, why? I don't actually think this about myself, or I don't feel this about this situation. Why am I listening to this? So that can be really powerful. And yeah, just exactly that. We're not fighting with ourselves anymore. Now it's something else. Now it's a person or a thing. And it makes it so much easier to talk back to it, take its power away, take its control away. And another thing with it too is also we might look at it like the enemy in the beginning, but it serves a purpose. So also figuring out what purpose it is and you know, okay, maybe it is protecting me from what, why, right? And really getting into it, like every story, right? Every character has a backstory. Every character has an intention and a motivation. Like, what is this person's intention and motivation? What are we getting from this? That can teach us a lot too about ourselves and just about everything that we're going through.
If one of these questions resonated with you, you are not alone. And if you have a question you'd like answered in a future episode, check the details in the show notes to submit. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.